Hello and welcome back to another episode of Doctor in a Bikini. If you're watching the video, you may recognize the background. I am in St. Louis, Missouri for the first time. We are staying at the Four Seasons, super bouge. When we got off the bus at like 2 a.m., we had to round the corners. And if you travel a lot for work, then you know some hotels are just weird, meaning like certain elevators will go to certain floors, but not the guest room floors. And when you're like just barely out of your REM sleep off of the bus and you're disoriented because you're like, I don't know what room I am, what hotel are we, where are the elevators? What do you mean there's two sets of elevators? Like it's a whole thing. But I was laughing because I was like, you can clearly tell that I do not go here to the Four Seasons. I have never been here before, and it's pretty nice. They got a whole spa. They have a nail salon. They've got like sauna situation here. It's pretty nice. So when I hop off of this podcast, I'll probably go check out the fitness facilities because, you know, I'm trying. I will say it's so funny how I started this, for lack of better words, journey. I feel like Bachelor World has really just changed my use of that word. When I started this journey, it's so funny. I had the best intentions of going on prep, which I think is a really valuable lesson for people. It's like, it's interesting how life challenges us and gives us other situations, and it makes us appreciate prep, but it's also not all that there is. And it's okay to step away. I actually had a friend message me saying I should do another episode. It's not today's episode. Today I'm actually going to get into some exclusive content that I'm making, and I'm going to share the first few tips with you. The episode title is probably going to give it away, but stay tuned. But my friend messaged me. She just made the decision to stop her prep, postpone it, no particular date in mind, just because of other life things. I think that happens a lot, whether that's because of health or, unfortunately, maybe some sad circumstances, or we just make the decision because it doesn't fit. And I'm not saying I'm not going to do prep this year. I'm still going to do prep this year. At least it's my current plan. You never know. Stuff changes. But I've been realizing that it's okay if the show I have in mind, if it just doesn't happen. Still going to try my best. But it's just, I don't know. It's a really important lesson. And I actually ran into a coworker downstairs. It's everyone's day off today. So Mondays I typically record, Tuesdays, which you're probably listening on a Tuesday or maybe later. That's cool. I still appreciate you listening. I ran into him. We had a really good conversation. So he's going to come on the podcast another week. But we were just talking about life and just some of the changes it throws at us. And oh my God, where was I going with that? I got really excited because that's another collaboration that's going to come. And I think it'll be a really good one. But anyways, no, I don't know where I was going with that. I'll circle back if it's relevant. But I'm just excited to be here. I have some fun stories to share. So first, let's go ahead. We'll recap the week, and then I'll go into some of the posing prehab / pelvic floor correlations. I've been making a whole document for this collaboration. So I thought, how about for the podcast, I give a little sneak peek so that way when it comes out, you know what to expect, because these are things that I address in posing prehab with clients, but I don't think certain things we know it's a problem until someone else mentions it, right? But first, funny story, because I didn't share this with anybody yet. So if you've been listening to the podcast, you know about this whole ice bath situation while on tour. If you're new here, I'm currently the physical therapist on the Dancing with the Stars tour. I have my doctorate in physical therapy. I also coach clients in lifestyle as well as posing services. I bring physical therapy to the table of coaching, and that's where my posing prehab comes into play as well. But anyways, if you've been listening, you know that me in this ice bath, we have been duking it out, okay? We were at, what venue were we at? It was, oh my gosh, we're in the Midwest, so it was somewhere in the Midwest. I don't think we were in Ohio. We weren't in Illinois. It wasn't Michigan. Oh my gosh, I don't know. Point being, I'm setting up this ice bath downstairs, and for context, it looks like a horse trough. So it's a pretty big, like, blow up ice bath. I now have what's called a sump pump, which is a huge lifesaver. Basically, you put this thing into said ice bath. You plug it in, because nothing says safety like plugging in something while submersed in water, right? Not submersed, but basically, like, there is no clean, dry way to do the ice bath. It just ain't gonna happen. So you carefully hold the sump pump, because you don't want it on the bottom of the ice bath. Otherwise, it will just suction, like starfish in Finding Nemo style, to the ice bath, and it's a whole thing, and you feel like you're gonna break it. So I am carefully holding this device. I am carefully plugging it in. And then, of course, the little hose that comes off, like, it goes crazy. I expect that. When you're holding the sump pump, you have to hold the hose and, like, point it towards whatever shower that day. And that's a whole other thing. Whatever bathroom you are blessed with that day, it is what it is. But this was a pretty nice bathroom setup, so I was feeling very hopeful. I was feeling very excited, because I was like, all right, things are going well. Things are looking dry. Things are going to stay clean and dry. Oh, randomly this TV just started playing. Hold, please. Okay, I'm back. You just got to stare at the nice St. Louis view for those 2 seconds. So I am doing my thing. I'm thinking about how well it's going. I even took my phone out to just do a little brief recording of how nicely this was going. I was like, wow, I'm dry, everything's great. Put my phone away, and I guess, like, maybe it's good I didn't still have it recording, but literally seconds after I put it in my pocket, the sump pump and the hose malfunctioned, and I don't know what happened, but the hose just yeeted itself right off of that machine, and the water went everywhere through this fast machine, because the machine is like lightning speed swallowing up this body of water. Well, it has to go somewhere. Where did it go, you might ask? Oh, I will tell you, Dora the Explorer. It went all over my face. Mind you, people get into this ice bath nude. So, like, to not put it in PC terms, I essentially had nude water all over my face, my mouth, like, all up in. I was wearing my favorite Athleta. Oh my God, I used to work there, and it's called Athleta, like, jumpsuit, bodysuit. Goes in there, goes on the ceiling. Where does it go from the ceiling, you may ask? I'll tell you. It ricochets from the ceiling, and it goes all the way down. And my hair was not a hair wash day, but now it was, down my back. It was, honestly, I looked like Carrie, but instead of, like, Blood at the Prom, it was Dancing with the Stars Nudity Water Edition. And this was double show day. This was double show day. So it was just, like, it was a roller coaster of emotions. That's all I can say. It's like, imagine if you had your work day, but then for some reason your work day started earlier, times 2, and you fit it in one day. That's a double show day, which, totally fine. But naturally, so when people have a lot of work to do, people can get, like, a little stressy lemon zesty. And, the vibes are vibing just a little differently that day. Put it all together, plus carry the ice bath edition, and it was just, it was honestly hilarious. I like squeak walked over to the production office, and I just stood in the doorway, and it was like one of those cry laughing moments, because I had already cried a little bit that morning, but this was just like, this was that delirious level of anything that happens at this point is just actually hilarious. So just wanted to share that with you. I was like, let me just save this for the podcast, because it was just like something you cannot make up. And I felt so bad, because as I am trying to clean up said water bath, ice bath, 2 of the staff members came by, and you can tell, like, they weren't pissed, but they were kind of pissed. Like, imagine if somebody flooded your bathroom just like imagine, and then you're like, oh my God, this is the shit I have to deal with. And I was like, I am so sorry. Like, I'm cleaning it up. They're like, no, like, we're gonna get a mop and everything. And I could just hear them talking about how they should have documented their day better, and how like they were gonna have to fill out like an incident report. And like, I want to be like, hey guys, like, I would not have set this up today if it were up to me. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Anyways, just thought that was funny. I had to share one of those moments you just can't make up. But let's get into the other stuff on the podcast. I really wish I remembered my conversation with John earlier. There was something I was going to share with you all about our conversation. I think it was pertaining to the whole like life meets competing, something like that. Anyways, maybe on our episode I'll remember. So today I have a fun bit to share. Like I said, I do posing prehab, posing services, and coaching services as a medical provider. But one thing that I think isn't really touched on a whole lot in the community, I mean, it's probably out there, but it's like you know everything on the internet isn't credible, right? It's just sometimes someone you like happens to say something, you're like, well, I like them, so I'm going to go with what they say. If it works for me, great. But certain things like you just don't know when you're scrolling unless you know the person, if it's actually advice that you should follow or tips that you should follow. So I'm going to use my expertise as far as physical therapy and pelvic health and how that pertains to the gym and posing. So number one, easy peasy, just general rule of thumb I'm going to tell you is that Kegels do not solve the world's problems. The toys, for lack of better words, that's not the word. The devices you see, like the strengthening devices that you see online, also not everybody's answer. For some people, yes. If a muscle needs strengthening, and if that's truly the issue, yes. Things that exercise your muscles in your pelvic floor might be the answer. But for a lot of people, and I'm not going to say an absolute of everybody, but I would say a majority of the time, a lot of us, especially in the competitor realm, typically the problem is more like faulty tension, I would say. And one way to best segue into this is my favorite rule on this resource is it's not all vacuums and rainbows. What do I mean by that? Well, when we think of competing, what is it that you see lots of people online practicing or showing off? It's their super impressive, hot, sexy vacuums, right? They're showing you how much they can draw their abdominals inward, how long they can hold it, their breathing strategies, whatever you see as you're scrolling past. I guarantee you've seen it today because I've seen it 3 times today on my feed. Is there a place for it? Yes. Obviously, in bodybuilding, we need to work and train our muscles, but it's not the only thing. And what do I mean by that? So on my resource, I'm going to get into the big sciencey explanation a lot deeper. But essentially, if you are familiar with the sliding filament theory or the length tension relationship, then this will make sense. Like I said, I'll get into it more on my actual resource. But what do I mean by this? Every muscle group, including our core region, our pelvic floor region, there is an optimum way of running. We want to make sure that we're strong, and we want to make sure that we know how to relax. And there is a happy medium there, meaning we shouldn't live in an extreme. But oftentimes when we are competing, when we are training, even in society, we want to feel and look our best. So what does that mean? A lot of us tend to walk around trying to brace, trying to suck it in, trying to look good in a picture. Maybe we're working on our abdominals, while we're sitting in the car, while we're at the gym, we're really thinking about flexing. And that's a whole other thing that I help people with too, is what muscles to turn on, because believe it or not, you should be able to engage your core without changing your breathing mechanics. If you're changing your breathing mechanics, you're not doing it right. You should be able to breathe, look relaxed up top, neck muscles relax, shoulders being, quote, relaxed, especially, on stage, you're obviously posing, but you shouldn't be achieving this look on stage by relying solely on tension, holding it in. Oh my God. If that is you, typically things like your pelvic floor, you might see some telltale signs like When you cough or sneeze, you pee a little bit. Maybe when you're working out, doing your squats, doing jumping movements, you pee a little bit. Maybe you are getting pain with sex, or like I'll even share right now with my job, I'm kind of squirreling a little bit, but this is like another rule. With my job, I've been noticing since now my everyday routine is changing. I used to move and stretch a lot more. Now it's a lot of static standing as I'm standing backstage. And my body, especially some of these venues, I'm standing on hard concrete and marley. My base of support that I'm standing on isn't as accepting. So that means that my body has to work a lot harder, which means my central core system has to work a lot harder. What does that mean? It means it creates the perfect opportunity for some of my muscles to reveal some of their underlying weaknesses they've already had. So for me, I have had to work on tension in my pelvic floor just from, the way that I breathe, my breathing mechanics, how my body wants to breathe versus when I make an effort to practice my mechanics. When I think about my core stability and how my body is supporting itself day to day, what my body wants to do naturally, meaning it's not as effortful, because if our bodies are so smart. If something is harder to do, our body's like, why am I going to work harder when I can work smarter? I'm going to do the easy thing. So these underlying impairments that have always been there for me in stability, relying on muscle tightness and closeness for stability, as well as maybe short breathing mechanics, things that are a whole pattern essentially for us. All of a sudden, things that maybe already were a little bit less efficient, as I got on tour and all these other life factors that I can get into, it creates the perfect storm. So simplifying it even more, what am I noticing on tour right now, even though I'm not competing? Well, as I am gaining weight in the off season, it's a natural reflex when we like to look and feel good to, try and like look a little smaller, or maybe in my bodysuit that I mentioned earlier with the ice bath, and I'm like, ooh, I want to take this picture, but I want to look a little. I notice I'm holding tension when I don't need to, and that's not good, because when we live in a state of tension, back to that length tension relationship, other problems arise. So while I'm standing for work, I notice that I am literally tensioning in, for a lack of better words, like in Bridesmaids, where she's like, I can feel it in my undercarriage. Like I can feel things are tightening when they don't need to. And I know I'm not alone, which is why it's not weird for me to share that, because these are just muscles. Like it's a very normal thing a lot of us experience, especially if you are a new mom, or maybe you have a background in gymnastics or dance. Our bodies tend to learn these coping mechanisms, for lack of better words, to try and gain that tension, which translates into our posing and things like that on stage. So what are some things that I'm doing? One of my rules that I have on there that I figured out with all this standing time is to literally dance it out. Sounds silly, but as you're standing there, so if your job is like mine and you notice like maybe you're standing a lot, maybe you feel like your adductors, your inner thighs just feel chronically tight. Maybe your knees are aching quite a bit, and maybe in your undercarriage you are feeling some tightness, or maybe you're feeling like you're having a hard time relaxing. Like I see a lot of people randomly at the Starbucks this morning, not that I'm looking at the person's glutes in front of me, but she literally just standing there at the counter is like squeezing her glutes for dear life. And I'm like, she is totally using that as a compensatory mechanism to stand with passive stability. Just like you see people standing on one hip, or people like standing and leaning against a counter, leaning against a wall. Our bodies are so smart, we don't even realize all these ways we try and offload or get additional support or tension throughout our day. So for me, throughout the day, when I'm noticing that things just won't turn off, you have to teach your body how to turn off and how to relax. So some things that I've been doing backstage is I will literally dance it out randomly with a song that's playing, just to like shake it up a little bit. Whether you're jumping up and down, maybe you are like channeling your Taylor Swift, shake it off. I don't know, whatever you're going to do, just like a little silly dance break. That can actually help to loosen up tension. If you have a quiet space that you can get into, like a downward dog position, or Honestly, I like to do my God, I hate calling it this because I like, I don't know what else to call it, but Connor makes fun of me because you cannot tell from my face, but I'm Filipino. That's part of my background. So he jokes. He's like the only Asian thing I see about you is your squat. So he calls it my little Asian squat because I can sit like basically butt to the floor and like my ankles, you know, you're picturing what I'm saying. So for me, that's another way if I'm not dancing it off, I will try and create slack within my lower half. So whether you're in a downward dog position, maybe you are in a child's pose position and you're really thinking about opening your hips to the wall behind you, or you're doing your little, again, don't know what else to call it, your little Shannon Asian squat, and you are literally envisioning trying to turn off and relax all the areas that have a hard time holding tension. Now, why is this important with posing? You may ask. I'm so glad you asked. When we think about the task at hand, which is you want to look like you are, you know, nice and tight and contracted on stage, your muscles look good, but yet you also want to look relaxed and effortless and nice and mobile and flexible. It's really a miracle what they ask us competitors to do on stage. This is one way that I help you, literally creating opportunities in those areas that do not want to loosen up, whether that is you have some stiffness in your back, maybe you've got some tension in like your lower half like I'm talking about, maybe your abs. Like sometimes I've gotten like in the past when let's just say my system, my we'll say like a car, right? A car has to make sure that all the engine parts are running, you know, all of your tires have to be aired up, your gas tank has to be filled. Like there's a system in place and everybody has a job in order to make that car go smoothly, right? Our bodies are machines as well. Everything has a job. And when along that chain, if someone isn't doing their job to par, then that's when you start getting the check engine light. That's when that weird sound or like smell, I don't know, hopefully not, is coming from your car because everything has to work harder and something is not right. Well, when we think about our posing routine on stage, if something isn't quite working efficiently, then that's where you get some complaints like, I cannot relax in my shoulders, or my breathing is so shallow, or some people really do say, hey, my pelvic floor hates when I'm competing. I get this weird belly button pain, or I just feel so tight in my thighs. I'm having a hard time keeping my core tight, especially during my front pose. And that's a whole other thing between the relationship of mobility and stability. That's where the PT hat comes in. So when we think of, let's say, for example, because for me, when I was at the peak of having some of my pelvic floor dysfunction, I looked really rigid on stage. I had this weird claw thing, which part of that is just, you know, awareness of what your hand is doing. But for me, you could see in between my shallow breathing, my elevated shoulders, the way my neck muscles were on, and whether or not my core actually stayed on when I turned in my front pose. So like I said, a few things you can try if you're not working with me are things like the downward dog, the child's pose, doing the deep squat, like I said, or dancing it out. Another thing you can implement, which I mentioned this just briefly a few moments ago, when you're going to the gym, if you are noticing that you cannot do things like jumping, running, maybe you notice that you feel some apprehension with certain movements that require you to really stabilize centrally. And you're like, maybe like with squatting, right? Maybe your ankles have great mobility. You've already seen a physical therapist. But maybe you notice that as the load gets harder, you can't go deeper. And I'm not saying deeper is necessarily better in a squat. It depends what the goal is. But say you can do it no problem without a load, but then say you add some other stimulus, and now because your body has to work a lot harder, you can't go deeper. All of these things are very common traits that point to this issue here that I'm talking about. So what are some things that you can try to implement on your own? say during your gym routine. I would say if you're not doing this already, I know everybody loves hearing this because we just have oodles and oodles of time and we're so perfect at warming up and cooling down. I know, but seriously, some of the things that you can do before your workout is trying to introduce things that require your body to warm up under the conditions of being simultaneously stable and mobile. Now, if that was like a mouthful and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, what does that look like? I've actually shared some things on my Instagram. One of the movements would be, let's say you're doing a half kneeling side plank. And for those of you that are listening that you're like, I'm a challenge accepted kind of person, I'm going to do a full plank. Honestly, sometimes less is more. For real, just try the half kneeling one with this because it's not your superficial abs, your rectus abdominis muscles that I'm asking you to target. I want you to think of almost like the vacuum muscles, but you are making sure that your pelvic floor muscles are completely off. You're not holding excess tension in your glutes or your toes or your arches. I actually mentioned this in a podcast episode previously. So doing something like a half plank while being mobile. So that can be, you're doing like an open trunk rotation to the sky and then back down. Maybe you are lifting that top hip and you're doing some internal rotation and external rotation without changing anything in your stabilizing muscles. Maybe you are just working on breathing and keeping everything relaxed while holding the position. There are a lot of different variations of what I'm saying that you can do. That's just one of the easiest ones that can give you an aha moment without me working with you directly. But those types of conditions, you want to make sure that your body has the ability to be mobile and flexible where it wants to and be stable when it needs to. Otherwise, if you just rush into these workouts, that's where things like pelvic floor symptoms can happen, whether that's the leaking, the tightening, pain, all those things. And obviously, everything I'm saying too, if you are noticing these problems, absolutely you can message me. But if you can, go see a physical therapist close to you in your area, especially if they do specialize in pelvic floor. That sounded really funny, especially if they do specialize in. But really don't wait until it's a problem. Even if you're already like experiencing these symptoms and you're like, oh, it's not that bad. Even if you have an iota of I have noticed that ever since I started competing, sex is really painful for me. Or I have noticed that I have this weird pulling sensation somewhere that I didn't have before. Or I have noticed that after I've gone to the bathroom, moments later, I have to go again. What the heck? That can be something like incomplete emptying, which can pertain to muscles being too tight. So that's where, again, trying some postures, certain stretches, certain strategies throughout your day, or actually working with a therapist in person might help you to restore appropriate function of those muscles and look better on stage. And then one last little tip that I'm going to get to finishing this resource. That way I can collaborate with these people. And I'm going to try the gym downstairs because, got to get those goals. The other thing that I did notice, speaking of standing throughout your day, is try to pay attention to some of those postures. And I've lightly touched on that a little bit. What I mean by that is, do you stand towards one hip? Say with posing, are you practicing with the other side? That can obviously create a more balanced relationship, especially if you're a bikini like me. We look for symmetry in the division. So if you're always favoring one size, then you are very progressively creating these asymmetries. And you might notice, certain things hiking up, whether that's in your back pose, one hip looks a little higher, maybe one shoulder looks a little bit higher. And just doing this throughout your day, not even just posing habits, but thinking about being even throughout your day can do wonders for everything up the chain. Whether that is literally doing your laundry, making sure you're reaching with the other arm, making sure if you're like me and you're getting on and off a tour bus, how can I offload everything on my right arm and be even with both arms? Maybe you're a new mom and you are constantly holding your child on one hip. I know it's a huge bother. Changing it up a little bit. Maybe, okay, I did this first half of the day, now this half of the day. Time for my other arm to pitch in. And I'm actually doing it right now. When you're sitting looking for opportunities to improve how you're holding that tension. Are you constantly crossing your legs? Are you leaning again towards one side? Are you tightening in areas when you're nervous or stressed throughout the day? Like super random. I noticed when I did this yesterday because there was like some weird vibes where everybody was just tired. And you ever have that moment where you're just like a fly on the wall and everyone around you is freaking out and you're like, nobody realizes that everyone is pissing each other off right now, and I'm just gonna sit here and I'm just gonna let all the vibes vibe until everybody goes into their corner. Anyways, as I was sitting there letting all the vibes vibe, I realized I was like, I am scrunching my toes right now just to like deal with the discomfort of this situation. So things like that, just pay attention to your body, because I know it sounds so silly, but I am proof because I had to learn these things from my own posing. All little opportunities throughout your day, not even just when you're practicing posing or just when you're at the gym. Try and take advantage of those little things you do. Breathing, posture, sitting, how you use your arms, how you use your legs, everything I just said, it all adds up. Or did I say breathing? If not, it deserves to happen again, because even on tour, like with the cold weather for whatever reason, like yesterday I was lugging all the bags in and I was like, man, I am such a shallow breather right now. Now, granted, every time I went to go take in a breath, like through my nose, because I was like, all right, Shannon, restore your natural breathing mechanics. Take in a deep breath through your nose and then blow out a purposeful breath through birthday candles. And as I was doing that, like the cold Michigan air literally was, I could feel it like burning the hairs in my nostrils. It was so cold. And I was like, okay, time for better breathing inside. Let's go. like, anyways, I feel like there's another fun story I was going to share with you all about tour. Oh my gosh, what was it? I don't know. I can't think of it, but I will say, because, balance and intuitive eating on this tour and just living life. I did order these cookies. I'm going to show you because this is how freaking fancy the Four Seasons is. I mean, I ordered some chicken and I was like, you know what? I want an order of cookies too. This was literally at my door with a bow on it. And I'm like, that is the fanciest. And I thought it was one or two cookies. I did not think it was a whole mini stack of pancake cookies with a cute little bow on it. How adorable is that? Yeah, I don't know. That's another thing. And then I'll sign off. This tour, it really has taught me a lot, not only with being okay with not knowing the plan and not knowing when I'm going to step on stage, not knowing how I'm going to look, like letting go of control of my, not of my body, but I think in off season, we have so much pressure. And I'm still, by the way, I'm still limiting my social media use, meaning my scrolling. And I'm really glad, because right now a lot of people are getting into prep. And it's a good reminder for me, because I caught myself worrying about the, not ratios, but I guess the ratios in my body. Every off season we have this ideal outcome where we only put on so much weight and we optimize our muscles and we're eating to grow and we have minimal body fat, but we're creating all this muscle and we're, using whatever supplements, protein, like amino acids or whatever people are using. Like they got this perfect concoction and routine. And I don't have any of that on tour. I don't have the perfect routine. I don't even know which cities we have a gym. Sometimes we do, like here we're at a hotel, so obviously we have access to a gym. And even when you do, sometimes you're like today, oh my gosh, I slept so late because we got in at 2 a.m. I kid you not, I woke up to a doorbell, which again, back to how fancy this hotel is, the room has a doorbell, not a knock, a doorbell. And it was 11:30. The inner competitor, the inner achiever in me was like, oh my God, I just slept through half of my day off, all this stuff I could do today, gym and job things and this is why I really do appreciate this tour, because it is such a good exercise to just let it happen. Sleep in a bit. If you can make it to the gym today, great, but you're not a failure if you don't. Enjoy the day. Enjoy not knowing the plan. Enjoy eating the foods. You're not going to be able to control all of the foods in front of you. I don't know what food we're getting. Some days we don't even get catering. Like one day, again, we were in one of these Midwest, I think we were in Iowa, potentially. That day was a complete buyout, which means no catering on site, which means and we were told the night before. So planning wise, it can be really tough because you don't know until you know whether or not you're going to have access to relatively clean foods. And that was a day where it was, you literally just had to Uber Eats or Grubhub. And that's whatever happened to be in the middle of nowhere, Iowa that day. And some days you just have to relinquish that control. And of course, that was a day that I did go on social media, and there are people competing, and there are people talking about, how their current preps are going. And it's just, I think it's really healthy to get to a place where you are not investing in what you see in other people's lives, and you're also not putting so much pressure on, oh, am I going to be ready for a June show? Am I going to, put on more muscle? Because obviously when you're not working out as much, like I feel like I'm in like overtime here, but it's my life, so I'm sharing it with you. Back home, I was lifting probably 4 or 5 times a week, and this past prep and this past off season, I achieved these all new lows and these all new highs in a good way. And yeah, sure, it can be a little discouraging. I don't know if that's the right word, but it can definitely challenge you emotionally to think, man, I just had the best prep of my life, the best off season of my life, the best reverse, and now I'm literally on tour, balls to the wall, just like, oh, I don't know what's happening tomorrow. I don't know what happened next week, but hoping for the best and eating intuitively where I can. Sometimes I scoop up my favorite protein bars on the road when I see them, or we do have bus stock. Now, granted, when I tell people we can order food for the bus and someone gets it, keep in mind I'm sharing this bus with like 9 or 10 other people, and we have this much fridge space and counter space, and it's a family on our bus too. So I don't go out of my way to order a whole lot of stuff because I'm not the only one on this bus. So I just order what I can and eat what I can when I can. And I just feel like we sometimes it do be like that. Sometimes we have to laugh at the ice bath getting splashed in our face and just just call it a day and hope for the best. So that is me right now. That is me with the 2025 season. That is me in St. Louis, Missouri. That's all I got for you this week. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Like I said, keep an eye out for my full resource. I can't really say what I'm making with these people, but I can say for me, for the Dr. Bikini community, and for my posing prehab girls, I have some guy clients too, but anyways, I'm creating this resource because I think it's information that needs to be shared and talked about in a credible way. So let me know if you have any questions for me that you want me to talk about more, any stories you'd like to share, or yeah, I don't know, anything fun you want me to do on the road. Maybe you're like, hey, I see you're in the city. Take a picture of blah, blah, blah. Pixar didn't happen. Yeah, I don't know. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you for being here, and I just am having a really good week. So I hope that you are too. I'll talk to you later. Bye, guys.